Hello there, I'm a nerd named Ryan, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So, as it is the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who, I thought I'd go back and rewatch some of the older anniversary specials. And I got to start the other night when I watched this, The Three Doctors. Now this of course was the 10th anniversary special. It was the first time they'd done an anniversary special, and it's also the first multi-Doctor story in history. As you can see, it features Jon Pertwee, Patrick Troughton and William Hartnell, the first three Doctors, hence the title. This is one of my favourite classic Doctor Who stories, and so I just kind of wanted to come on here and just ramble about it for a little bit. So yeah, let's do that. The Time Lords are in crisis. A powerful force is draining their energy into a mysterious black hole, and they must recruit the Doctor to save them. But one Doctor isn't enough for this mission. All three of the Doctor's incarnations, aided by Jo Grant and UNIT, must face the wrath of Omega, a fallen Time Lord trapped for millennia in a universe of antimatter. Driven mad by his exile, Omega has just one thing on his mind: revenge. First off, isn't that just a great setup for a story? You've got a universe of antimatter being sort of created and controlled by a mad evil Time Lord that exists within a black hole. That is amazing to start with. And yeah, this is one of my absolute favourite classic era stories. In fact, it's one of my favourite Doctor Who stories in general. I think this is essential viewing for if you're, getting into the classic era. It's just so good. Let's talk about some specific things that I really like about it. So first off, I love that setup. I love the whole thing with the Time Lords and how they basically have to break the rules of time, because the Time Lords are used really interestingly in this story. Basically, we sort of cut back to them every now and then, and their job is effectively to just do, sort of exposition, just to tell you exposition, tell you what is happening. But it never feels like exposition, it feels like discussion, because they're kind of strategizing, they're discussing tactics, like, how do we stop Omega? Oh god, what do we do? He's draining all of our power, what do we do? And I really love kind of the importance that they place on the idea that they need multiple versions of the Doctor, because it breaks the laws of time to have the Doctor sort of interfere in his own timeline. It basically breaks the laws of time to have more than one version of the Doctor meet. And I love the kind of way that they kind of discuss that. They go through the different options, like, look, we can't do it, it breaks the laws of time. Yeah, but we have no option. And I love that. It's sort of that idea that they immediately set up that this is their last resort. This is the only option they have left. And that really lends desperation to the story pretty much immediately. It basically sets up how powerful and how dangerous Omega is. It puts extra stakes in the story and also gives Omega that kind of extra level of, oh, this is a guy not to be messed with. Like, the Time Lords are so worried about Omega and this black hole that's draining power from them that they are willing to break the laws of time because they have no other choice. I love that, and it's also a really clever way of setting up the fact that there's multiple Doctors in the story and why we haven't seen multiple versions of the Doctor, meet and work together before, because it would break the laws of time. So I really like that setup. I think as far as, setting up the story and setting up the multiple Doctors and setting up the villain, the bits with the Time Lords works really well. I really enjoy that. Speaking of the villain, Omega is fantastic in this. Omega is just great. The design is wonderful. I love the kind of the costume and the mask that he has. That's great. The mask is kind of integral to a big reveal, which I won't spoil for you in case you haven't seen it, because it's really good. It's one of the best parts of the episode. Omega is also brilliantly performed. Stephen Thorne really commands the screen. Obviously he's got a mask on for this entire performance, so he can't use his facial expressions, so using his voice and his body language, he kind of gives Omega this real sense of presence. Omega feels big and dangerous and important because of Stephen Thorne's portrayal. And yeah, it's a little bit over the top at times, a little bit melodramatic at times, but classic Who and classic sci-fi kind of is melodramatic and over the top. So I think it's done wonderfully. I think Stephen Thorne is great in this story. I really love his inclusion and him playing this villain. I think it's really excellently done. What else? Oh, I love UNIT in this. UNIT are one of my favourite things about Doctor Who. I've always loved UNIT. The Brigadier's great. Yeah, UNIT are used really effectively here, I think. Now, there's a lot of stuff to like in the Three Doctors, but I think something that's really good that often gets overlooked, and something that certainly I didn't appreciate the first time I watched this story, is William Hartnell. Now, initially, I believe the plan was to have all three of the Doctors have roughly equal amounts of screen time. Maybe a little bit more for Jon Pertwee, because he was the current incarnation. But that was roughly the idea. It was all three of them were supposed to have roughly the same amount of stuff to do. But then by the time the story was revealed, the story title was revealed and all the press went out, the producers were told by William Hartnell's wife that he wasn't going to be able to do as much as they needed him to do. He wasn't very well, he was in poor health, he wasn't going to be able to do the things they needed him to do in the story. So the story was kind of hastily rewritten. A compromise happened where they had William Hartnell used very sort of sparingly. They kind of took it, I think they filmed him in a separate location, in a separate kind of studio, on his own, just in front of a black background and reading his lines off a cue card. And then they sort of just inserted him into the story at random points. He just basically talks to the other two Doctors and the other characters via a TV screen. He shows up on a TV monitor and he's just talks to them kind of via the TV screen. What I've always liked about the First Doctor is kind of his mischievous side. He has a very kind of playful, almost childish side to him. We often think of the First Doctor as being this kind of grumpy old man. But he had that kind of really childish, kind of cheeky side to him. And I love that. He always had that smirk and that chuckle and that twinkle in his eye. And what's remarkable is, even though you can absolutely tell in the story that William Hartnell is struggling and that he's not in the best of health, you can still see that kind of mischievous side of the First Doctor shine through. He's still got that little twinkle in his eyes. He's still got that cheeky little smirk. And it's so wonderfully done. And I love the First Doctor. And I love that about the First Doctor. And I love that that's what they went with. And I love that they kind of included him in a way where he could do that. Because it would have been very easy just to put him there, have him say like 2 or 3 lines, be a bit grumpy and then leave again. But they include him just enough where he can sort of let that kind of mischievous side show. You can let William Hartnell, have those little moments with that little twinkle in his eye and that little sparkle. It's difficult to describe, but I'm really glad they let the First Doctor do that. I'm really glad they didn't just resign him to being, very minimalist cameo appearance, just say a few lines and be a bit grumpy. No, they let him be witty. They let him have a bit of banter with the other two Doctors. They actually include him in the climax of the episode, of the story, because the Doctors, they have this telepathic, communication that they do, and they have to kind of do it with the third, second, and First Doctor right at the end in order to figure out how to defeat Omega. So I really like that. I really like that they not only included William Hartnell, but they included him enough where his Doctor is essential to the story, even though he's not in it anywhere near as much as the other two. That's really, really sweet. That's really great. And as someone who really, in the past few years especially, has come to really appreciate William Hartnell as the First Doctor, it just warms my heart to see it. I just love seeing that. I love seeing William Hartnell's inclusion in this. I think it's really special. And this was the last time William Hartnell would play the Doctor, and I think, what a final story to be in. And he's wonderful in it, and I love him in this. He's so good in it. Something else I really like is in the second episode, we kind of split the two Doctors off from each other, and we have the third Doctor and Jo go off to Omega's world, the sort of the world of antimatter, and we have the second Doctor hanging out, still on Earth with the Brigadier. He's not hanging out, he's trying to, solve the problem, but he's on Earth still with the Brigadier and Unit. And something that's really great in this story, and I always forget about it, and it always makes me laugh every time, is how quickly Patrick Troughton's Doctor manages to just utterly annoy the Brigadier. Like, the Brigadier is so sick and tired of the second Doctor's nonsense almost immediately, and it's wonderful to see. I think Nicholas Courtney is one of those actors who, whichever Doctor he was with, he was just great with them. Same thing with Elizabeth Sladen, of course, who played Sarah Jane. I think a lot of people think of Sarah Jane as being, you know, a fourth Doctor companion, but she was just as good with Jon Pertwee, David Tennant, and Matt Smith as she was with Tom Baker. And I think the same thing applies here to the Brigadier, whether he was with the second Doctor, the third Doctor, the fourth, when he showed up later with, you know, the seventh Doctor in Battlefield. He was always really, really good. Nicholas Courtney's a great actor. The Brigadier is a great part. Nicholas Courtney is perfectly cast as the Brigadier. He is really, really good, and the way that he kind of plays off all the different versions of the Doctor is just so good. But one of my favourites is whenever he's with the second Doctor. They put him again with the second Doctor in the Five Doctors, the 20th anniversary special, and I think that was a good move because Brigadier is just so good with Patrick Troughton. I just love how annoyed he gets immediately. He hates this man. You can tell everything the Doctor does just like gets this really annoyed, disgruntled response from the Brigadier, and it's comedy gold, man. It's so good. I love seeing it. Brigadier is solid pretty much throughout this entire run, but especially in this story. I think he's great in it. He's really, really excellent. I love Jo. Jo is a really underrated companion. I think Jo with the third Doctor is a great pairing. One of my favourite classic TARDIS teams, actually. I really like Jo and the third Doctor. I'm really glad we're actually getting Series 9 as the next release, as the next Blu-ray release, because that's obviously a Jo Grant series. And yeah, I think Katie Manning and Jon Pertwee have wonderful chemistry, that kind of chemistry that is essential to a great Doctor companion pairing. They play off each other so well. I really love Jon Pertwee in this. Jon Pertwee is so good in this story. I think the third Doctor's a really great incarnation of the character anyway. And yeah, Pertwee was always good, but he is excellent in this story. Like, there's so many great little moments with him where he kind of has to have a fight in the dark, where he has to sort of witness the dark side of Omega's will, and he has basically this slow motion fight scene with a weird monster guy. That's a really good scene. The bit where he explains antimatter by using a magic trick. He does a magic trick to explain antimatter because, like, look, much like what I just did, this is all a conjuring trick done by Omega. That's a really great moment, and it's such a Doctor thing to do, isn't it? Just like, I'm going to explain it to you by using magic and showmanship. I love that. That's a wonderful bit. His bits with Omega are really, really good. You know, Stephen Thorne and Jon Pertwee, they play off each other so brilliantly in their scenes. They play it, yeah, they're just great together. They're just a great sort of contrast. Two performers who are just absolutely nailing their characters, nailing their lines, and are just great in the scenes that they have together. But my absolute favourite thing about this story is Patrick Troughton in general, but especially Patrick Troughton and Jon Pertwee together. Like I say, this was the first time we got a multi-Doctor story, and I think it's one of the best because Pertwee and Troughton are such different versions of the Doctor. You know, you've got Pertwee as the kind of suave sort of action hero, man of science, all business, very kind of, you know, takes what he's doing quite seriously, but is still, you know, charming and fun as well. Still charming and funny as well, but he takes it very seriously. He's, you know, again, he's the sort of suave action. He's basically the closest thing the Doctor's ever going to get to James Bond. And then on the other hand, you've got Patrick Troughton, who kind of is this goofy, bumbling sort of clown man who's just great. You know, you can see a lot of future Doctors. You can see a lot of Patrick Troughton in future Doctors. I think Sylvester McCoy had a little bit of Patrick Troughton in it. Matt Smith, you can absolutely see Troughton's influence on Matt Smith on the 11th Doctor. Yeah, so I love that they've got these two very contrasting personalities as the Doctor, and they just play off each other so well. You know, Troughton and Pertwee would become really good friends, and you can see why. They're having such fun acting opposite each other, clearly. It's so good to watch. They're constantly bickering. Is great. I love how they're bickering, but then at one point they have to work together to solve a problem, and they do it, and then they just go to immediately just patting each other back and complimenting each other, like, just, well done, old boy. Well, I couldn't have done it without your help, of course. I'm like, you were fighting 10 minutes ago. You were going, you're an idiot. Well, you're stupid, and all that. I love that sort of banter between the Doctors. whenever the Doctor banters with themselves, it's always good. That's what that's what the appeal of a multi-Doctor story is, whether it's Day of the Doctor, the 5 Doctors, the 2 Doctors, whatever. But I don't think it's done better than it is here. I think this is still the best example of it. But yeah, to me, that is just the best part of this. The 3rd Doctor and the 2nd Doctor as this kind of adorable comedy duo. They're just so good. So yeah, Pertwee and Troughton are great. I just love Patrick Troughton anyway. Patrick Troughton is so good in this story. There are some great moments. There's a bit where he offers the Brigadier a jelly baby, and I love that because it's pre Tom Baker. I love that it's something the Doctor's always done, is just offering jelly babies. I love that. That was a moment. I always forget that that's in there, and whenever it happens, I'm like, oh yeah! 2nd Doctor offering out jelly babies. I love that. Again, I love how quickly he manages to annoy the Brigadier. I love that he keeps sort of going on about losing his recorder, because he loses his recorder and he keeps like going on about it, and every time he brings it up he's more and more agitated by the fact that they can't just let him look for his, they won't just help him look for his recorder, you know. Everyone else is like, Doctor, we've got more important things to deal with here, but he's like, yeah, but my recorder though. I love that, and I love that the recorder ends up being an integral part in saving the day. The fact that something so irrelevant, the fact that he spends all this time looking for his recorder and you think, this is not relevant, this is pointless, this is irrelevant, what are you doing this for, Doctor? And then it ends up being something that helps them save the day, is genius. It's such wonderful, that is perfect sort of Doctor Who. Just like, yeah, we're going to ramble on about this thing for ages and ages, but it will come back and it will be actually quite important. I sort of love that. And I love the way that they explain it, the recorder being kind of vital to defeating Omega. Well, not vital, but important to defeating Omega, in a way that doesn't feel like it's a cheat, it doesn't feel cheap, and it doesn't feel silly. It feels earned. And I kind of love that. That's great. Also, the 2nd Doctor nearly gets himself and the 3rd Doctor just killed by Omega because he keeps shouting at Omega about his recorder, like full on arguing with him about it. And Pertwee has to be like, just shut up, you're going to get us killed, you idiot. What are you doing? Those two in this are so good, man. Pertwee and Troughton. This story is worth watching for Pertwee and Troughton alone. Like, even if I didn't like the story, which I do, the story's great, but even if I didn't like the story, I would still watch this repeatedly just for those two. And then those little bits where Hartnell shows up and just goes, look, you two, stop bickering, shut up. You have to work together, you know. I love that. I love that that's what Hartnell's job is, basically, just to show up and say, like, you're not doing very well here, are you guys? Just come on. Pull yourselves together, work together. I love that. That's basically Hartnell's job, that's Joe's job, that's the Brigadier's job as well. And I just love that. That's just great. Those two in this are just so perfect. The story's really well written. I think it looks great for Classic Who. The special effects and the sets in it are actually really good. Again, Omega's costume and design is just great. All of the supporting cast are great. Oh, I will say, there's a character in it called Dr. Tyler, a supporting character. Dr. Tyler is an idiot, right? Every single time the Doctor, who clearly knows more about this whole situation than he does, the Doctor keeps telling him to do stuff, he just doesn't do it, ignores it, goes off and does something else and nearly gets himself killed. He does this like a few different times, and I'm like, you're an idiot, Dr. Tyler, you clearly don't know what you're talking about. The Doctor does, maybe listen to him. You're supposed to be a scientist. You're supposed to be smarter than this, you know? Clearly, I think if you were really as smart as you think you are, you would go, look, I don't understand this, the Doctor seems to, I'm going to listen to what the Doctor says. You know? Idiot. Dr. Tar, he's a fun character, I don't dislike him, but I'm like, you are a bit of an idiot. Like, multiple times he does something that's really dumb, and I'm like, why? But yeah, the 3 Doctors, overall, one of the absolute best stories in Classic Who. It is essential viewing for if you're getting into Classic Who, I would say. Just everything about it's great. Again, Pertwee and Troughton as a comedy double act is just amazing. I really like William Hartnell. It warms my heart to see William Hartnell sort of not only involved in this, but he's so good in it, and it's just really lovely to see him be so good in this story. You know, all of the supporting cast are great. Omega is a terrific villain. It's just great. There's nothing bad I can say about the 3 Doctors. It's honestly one of my favourite classic era stories, one of my favourite stories of Doctor Who just in general. And if you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend it. Absolutely, I would. It's easily one of my top 5 favourite classic era stories, without a doubt. So that's going to wrap it up from me today. I ended up rambling on about this a lot more than I thought I would, but I just get so excited when I talk about a Doctor Who story that I like, and I had like a lot to say about this, and it kind of ended up being a bit more rambly than I was initially planning. But hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully, if you've never seen the story, I would recommend it. If you've never seen it, definitely check out the Three Doctors, because it's great. Let me know what your thoughts on the story are in the comments if you feel like it. That's going to wrap it up from me. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you when I see you.